It feels really special this morning for me to invite both Dr. Ann Green and Kaela Morden up to speak about their experience and creative project in developing a film called The Daytimers. A couple of years ago when I moved back east from Toronto, I moved into an apartment building and got a chance to meet Anne, who is now my neighbor, in our building and in our community lounge. So sort of bumping up and bumping into community in that way. And then several months later, was invited to a screening of their film, and it was just really touching, and I just loved the mother and daughter duo behind this film as well. And so that really landed for me. So I'm really excited to have them both here. So in terms of formalities, Dr. Ann Green's career as a social psychologist has included a strong commitment to supporting children with emotional difficulties in school and to ensure that they have easy access to treatment. She served as a board member of a foundation dedicated to funding school-based treatment, and she became interested in understanding more deeply why children suffer from emotional problems and that they were successful in spite of these challenges. Her research and her work and practice really centered around resiliency. And so shortly before her retirement, Dr. Green, her neighbor and soon-to-be friend, a longtime friend, Judith Parsons, had a major stroke. And she became a poster person in her life for the concept and embodiment of resiliency. Although not close friends at the time, Dr. Green frequently visited Judith while she was in a coma and happened to witness Judith awakening after 6 months, uttering her first words, "Where is the blanket of earth that was covering me?" And these events and subsequent experiences led to the documentary film about Judith, which I mentioned is called The Daytimers, and Dr. Green became the executive producer for this film. Kaela Morden is a Toronto-born teacher who studied film and English literature at U of T. Her interest in producing documentary was sparked by the interplay of her educational background and led to a strong desire in bringing people's stories to the screen. She was thrilled at the prospect of working with her mother to tell the story of Judith Parson in the film that they created together, and it recounts Judith's journey to regain a sense of normalcy and in truth finding acceptance in surviving her stroke, which left her with no short-term memory. So having known Judith both before and after the stroke, Kaela and Dr. Green, the mother and daughter team, were uniquely positioned to share about Judith's struggles and the triumphs through this film, and with their invaluable team behind the film as well. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Ann Green and Kaela Morden. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Kaela.
I'm Ann. And so I don't even have to tell you now about why we're here and what we're doing. So I will just start off by showing you a small clip about Judith's film.
We'll jump right into that. Yeah. Sorry for the behind-the-scenes look here, everybody.
Actual magazine. Life was just at its very, very best. Everything else seemed to be a build-up to that, and the trajectories all looked like explored all these avenues, and they all led to the most perfect job of all. I've been doing the magazine at that point for almost 14 years. I'd reached the end of my creativity. I just ran dry, which meant brand new career, or carry on as I was doing. While all this was going on, I still had responsibilities. The mortgage had to be paid, the food had to be bought, my 6-year-old had to be put number one at all times, listened to, helped with homework, go to school events. I was the chairman of the local daycare for 2.5 years when he was there. I was burned out. And I remember saying to myself, oh God, if there was only some illness I could have that would allow me to stay home, tend my garden, raise my son, be a good friend to my phalanx of friends, and a loving daughter to my mom and dad. That's all I want in life. And within 9 months of making that remark was when I had my stroke.
Thank you. You know, I can't watch this without getting choked up myself. And it's been, I don't know, 20 years since we started this. Anyway, I will just give you a little bit of background about this, and then Kaela will take it from there. Judith and I were not close friends at the time that she had her stroke. A neighbor told me about the stroke, and for some inexplicable reason, I was drawn to the hospital, to emergency. And of course, when I got there, it was inappropriate to be there because I wasn't a friend and I wasn't a relative. So I just turned around and came back home. And but I started visiting Judith in Coma. And as Carla mentioned, I was the person that was with her when she came out. And those words were quite remarkable. Where is the blanket? Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. So, so you've seen the slide now, and I'm just going to say a few words about what drew me to do the film, apart from just Judith's amazing feat. And that was the daytimers that she created, because daytimers, you get the template. She was able to memorize things on the page. And this was because of the concept of neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity, it allows people to, through repetition and repetition, to memorize things. And Judith was actually able to visually memorize where things were on her page. And that has allowed her to live independently.
With no short-term memory at all. We were going to speak to our connection with Judith is, despite the fact that she has no memory, she has this incredible ability to memorize poetry, to remember and recite poetry. I was fortunate to live with her during the time that I was forming knowledge, and I was studying English and cinema studies, and I would go to school and have this education and come back and get a whole second education from Judith. So poetry has actually played a really important part in our relationship with Judith. And there was one poem called Sisyphus that, well, Mom, do you want to speak to?
Yeah, I will. Judith actually, now this fascinates me even to this day. Judith had cut out a poem from the New Yorker, which she used to get, and the poem was Sisyphus. And at the time, she didn't have her stroke. And she and I were actually talking about this the other day. I said, Jude, this poem was really foreshadowing your stroke. And so you can see it. If I'm going up in too much time, anyway, I will recite it. How many times I've tried just to say what I'm doing with this rock. Exhaustion, hope, despair are things I've talked about. An irony or prayer. Or how I've held this rock to be a part of me. I think I've learned enough to say it's just a job. Each day brings changes, but ultimately not much. Working the damn thing up takes what it takes. But then, you watch it teeter, hear it thunder, all that anger grinding down the slope. You don't, as the God said, get something for nothing. No. 10 years before the stroke.
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with Judith started when I was a kid, and it really blossomed as a teenager because I would go to visit her every day after school. I would sit there, talk about life, cheeky smoke. The nice thing about knowing someone like Judith is that she doesn't remember anything. So I could talk about whatever I wanted, and she wouldn't remember about this one, and same with you. Right? It was a very valuable thing to have. And that's why we both want to develop this separate relationship with her. So for me, I was a 20-something-year-old living in a house with two 60-year-olds. She has a partner named Dawn, and it was a strange little, it was a family that we developed. And my mom was a part of that on the periphery. And my mom actually wrote a poem about Judith called My Daughter's Mother. Which I think you should read since you're in the spirit.
Since you insist. And I should just say that chicken ritz is a dish that she was creating. To the classy lady, excuse me, of chicken ritz, whose largesse of heart just never quits. Her house is home to the lucky few. If word were out, there would be a queue. Inside resides a mélange of souls, a queer little family, we've all been told. Each is clever and enjoys the other. In fact, Judith is my daughter's mother. Her wit can confound, her knowledge abounds, the breadth of which is known to astound. She bestows these gifts upon my kid. In truth, there seems to be no lid. She offers up a smorgasbord of tasty fare, deserving an award. At the end of the day, as she serves the last meal, she and Papa Bear, that's done, relax to the wheel. So here's to Judith, beloved friend. Happy 61st birthday, and friends to me.
That's lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah, so when Carla first approached us to talk about this, there was another theme that was happening with Creative Mornings, and then we saw the theme of acceptance, and this one spoke to us so much because, yeah, as someone who suffered this massive brain hemorrhage and woke up really at 43, like a newborn, she had to remember or learn how to do everything, how to go to the bathroom, how to brush her teeth, how to work a microwave. I mean, it was an incredible feat. So the theme of acceptance obviously rang really true to us as far as Judith is concerned, because she was a bit of a harsh lady before her stroke, and she always talks about little miracles since her stroke. So everything is a little miracle. Someone bringing her flowers on a hard day, a cabinet fitting perfectly into a space, having ice cream in her fridge, someone randomly stops by. It's really inspiring and part of why we wanted to make this film in the first place. And then for us, as a mother-daughter team, we definitely had to channel acceptance. When we first started to come up with this concept over 20 years ago, many things have obviously changed since then. Originally, we had wanted to make a feature film. We had it all casted in our head. I was going to be Kaela Morden would play me.
Susan Sarandon.
Who did we have for Judith? Rita Wilson. Tom Hanks' wife. And then Dawn was going to be Tom Hanks. It was a whole thing.
Really lofty.
And then as we started really getting into it, we would work with other filmmakers who told us that really our story lends itself better to documentary. So we had decided we have to embrace that medium. Even still, it was supposed to be a feature-length documentary, and now it's a 35-minute short, which is very different from what we'd originally wanted, but we've absolutely come to accept it. And it seems as though some folks in the community have as well, who were accepted or nominated for 4 film festivals around the world, from Chicago to Toronto. And yeah, it's very cool because, we have over 20 years had to also, come to accept a lot of the struggles that we had, including this morning, getting ready to come here.
I just wanted to interject something. Our first editor did the longer version of the film, and yet, when we had to sort of stop for a while, when she saw Ted's version, our new editor, she said she had tears in her eyes, and that meant so much to me because here she put in all this work in producing a rather lengthy documentary, and yet she herself was moved by it.
And we have this document, this testament of our struggles over the last 20 years as mother and daughter, which we will hopefully look back on with love and cherish. And yeah, that's it.
Introduce the trailer.
Oh yes, we're going to show you our trailer. So if anyone wants to see it, you will ultimately be able to find it. I realize I didn't put this at the Daytimers documentary on Instagram, so we'll post a link to that if you're so inclined to watch it after this.
I first met our friend Judith Parsons back in the 1970s. She was an editor, she was in charge.
I was kind of intimidated by her, I think, because she was so perfect in every way.
She broke boundaries, she climbed mountains, literally and figuratively.
Life was just at its very, very best. Everything else seemed to be a build-up to that. I explored all these avenues, and they all led to the most perfect job of all.
We were in a meeting downtown. Judith was sick. We found her on the floor. We called for an ambulance. 10 minutes at Women's College, and they came out and said they knew something major was going on in her head.
We pretty well just said our goodbyes and figured that was it for Judith.
One day when I was visiting Judith, her eyes opened and she said to me, "Where is the blanket of earth that was covering me?" If you can imagine.
I'm in the hospital. I can't remember anybody that comes. I can't remember what I'm eating. I can't remember where I am. I keep losing track of it.
She had a difficult time.
Most people with memory problems due to a brain injury like that have trouble forming new memories.
Every step I made in the hospital had to be written down. I suffered a hemorrhage brain on April 24th, 1985. I was in Toronto General Hospital for 8 weeks. It's an anomaly. On the one hand, I have no memory, and yet I can tell you what I had for dinner in 1997.
Judith writes files on everyone, and that's her brain.
She cannot move out of this very second.
She's really a one of a kind. I've never known anybody like Judith.
In today's world, there's so much to wear you down, but every now and again you get an opportunity, as I do, to just part the veils for a while and just see what's there to be seen.
Well, Judith couldn't be here with us this morning, so I think we should give her a little round of applause for the incredible I was joking with Kaela earlier about how I'm sure there are many folks in Judith's life who wish to get rid of some of those daytimers, knowing that they've got the group on, she's got the group on a lot of people, and you've offered that that's true, that there's some things that you both would rather than not have written down.
Well, not only is that true, but at one point I said, "You know, Jude, I think I need to destroy your file." And she looked at it and she said, "Hey, how could you even think about that?" I said, "Easily, God forbid something happens to you. And the file is there. And you have written a lot about us." And he blah, blah, blah. She gave it to me, I shredded it. And for a long time, it was difficult for her to accept, however. She accepted it, and there's another acceptance. There you go.
Well, congratulations to you both on the film that I know took over 20 years of challenge and love and dedication and acceptance in so many shapes and forms, and all the nominations for the many film festivals over the last couple of months. So just, that's a huge feat. So congratulations. I'm sure others in the room will tell as well a little bit more about the creative process itself. Neither of you had made a film before and not filmmakers sort of in your everyday life or as your main creative pursuit. So can you tell us a little bit more about what that was like? Maybe a little bit more about that process.
Yeah, I studied film and took documentary classes, but I was never creative behind it. I studied more theory and history. So it just really came about because I think we were both moved to tell the story. It felt like we were uniquely positioned to talk about someone we thought was remarkable. So my mom was really the person that gathered all the crew. In the 20 plus years, we've had 3 different crews. So that's morphed and changed. My mom really, can speak more to that.
Oh, again, acceptance. We had to accept the fact that we had to keep on going and gather more people to do the film. And when Judith was assessed at Baycrest, we had our new director editor with us, and he was just so wonderful. So we've been very fortunate.
And what was it like working together as a mother and detective and all the dynamics that play in that relationship?
As you
I don't know which one I should be asking first, huh?
I think that we have learned from this process that we have very, very different strengths and weaknesses. And even last night, putting some finishing touches on stuff. We've learned how to work in a way that highlights both of our skills. And she is quite the techie.
I'm not that techie, but Kaela's organization skills have really pulled us through this talk today. She has been so organized. And Mom, and very important. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting us.
One other question for me, and then we'll open it up to the audience. But you mentioned, or it is mentioned in the film, and I think, and you certainly mentioned it explicitly, Kaela, around the little miracles as a way in which Judith has chosen to live her life, despite her lack of short-term memory, and probably in her own version of acceptance, day to day, moment to moment. I wonder what little miracle showed up for you in the 20-year journey to create the film.
Yeah, it's a good question. We got to meet people, go to places along the way of shooting. A farm where Judith has a lot of people that worked with her when she was an editor before her stroke. Really interesting people. So the connections that we made with just the folks in the movie as well as our various crews have been really wonderful. I think that is definitely stood out, despite challenges. We developed relationships and doing this thing that we didn't expect to do in the first place. So.
And just lastly, you mentioned the 20-year, that came up there too, it being 20 years, that requires a lot of stamina, a lot of recommitment as well to the craft, right, and to the practice. Anything there that you want to speak to?
Well, I should mention that when I took Kaela, she was 3 at the time. When I took her to the hospital to see Judith the first time, Judith looked and said, "Judith, what's that?" And without skipping a beat, Judith's response, "Oh, pet, that's what they give you in hospitals to keep track of hairdos."
Talking about the hospital bracelet.
And so Kaela looked at me quizzically, and I said, "It's okay, I'll tell you later." And, so yeah, 20 years.
20 years, yeah, it's quite the journey. Quite the relationship built in so many ways.
Yeah, it's strange seeing her now because she's in her 80s. This happened when she was in her 40s. So now she's legitimately, as we do, losing memory. So it's really an interesting contrast to see her, the one I knew at 60 to now. She's still Judith, but it's interesting just to watch her age, I guess.
Great. Emily has the mic. If there's any thoughts, questions, comments in the crowd, in the community, we'd like to take them. Yeah, sure.
Over how many years did that movie take to produce?
About 20.
Sorry?
About 20.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
At what point did you shift from understanding that maybe a feature wasn't the right direction to go in?
Well, apart from the fact that we couldn't afford the stars. Kaela, my memory escapes.
In the span of 20 years, I want to say 5 years in maybe, I think, because it was very much just in talks for years. We should do this thing. I think she would be a great subject for it. And so before we even really laid any groundwork for anything, the moment we really started shooting, it had already become a documentary for us. Yeah, but originally a feature length. So it all kind of left in the editing room. That was hard to see because there's so many moments that we really loved shooting, and it's hard when there's all these creative choices to decide which ones you want to use to tell the story. I think that was really the hardest part for us.
Yeah, I'm just curious because it was 20 years in the making. Did you guys change your approach as to how to tell the story over this time, or was it just one continuous idea that carried you throughout those years?
Well, again, it was the change, to a documentary. But But even so, as Kaela said, we still had to shoot footage. And so it was in the editing, what to choose in terms of what really seemed important, because we had reams and reams of footage.
Yeah, we had one edit, and then our new editor took over and really just made it what it is today. We watched it so many iterations of it that it's kind of hard to remember. Yeah.
I just have a question. I can speak loudly. I mean, this documentary focuses on one person, her story. So when you talk about all this creative journey, creative choices you're making, how was it, how involved was she? And also in the theme of acceptance, her seeing herself, her changes over 20 years, her story on screen. What was her emotional journey being, seeing it, being really confronted with it?
Yeah, that gives me goosebumps, that question. That she, as she said, she has no memory, so we would have to remind her frequently. She would spend all day shooting with us and be such a trooper too. And if she gets tired, it's a lot to be memory impaired. It's so much to carry. Just getting through the day is exhausting for her. So, she would spend a whole day with us and then forget that it happened. So every time she either hears us talking about it or the two screenings she's been at, it's been very overwhelming for her in a nice way, I think, just seeing the impact she's had. Yeah.
Okay, so two things. One of them is just how amazing this product is, and how it's kind of like a natural extension of her daily journal. It's like here, there's a visual daily journal, but then there's also this thing where, you mentioned, Kaela, you were already visiting Judy in the hospital when you were 3, right? So, for all of us as artistic and creatives, we already give a bit of ourselves to everything we put out there. But this is literally sort of life. So how is that in terms of accepting that? Because it's even more of a reality, right? Because it's more intimate than I think what we do, which might be a snapshot. For you, it's here's this chunk of my life. How was it like that in terms of you kind of wrapping your head around it?
How do I answer that? Living with her was challenging because we were so close. So there were, I don't know if I'm answering your question fully, but.
I also don't even know if this is a question that can be answered. I don't even know.
It's okay, go for it.
Oh, what I was going to say was, I think the big challenge in terms of acceptance will be when it's done. And because it was such a big chunk of our lives, there's plenty in both of our lives that follow, but still it was just so big. But my intention was always to get the film into neurology departments and hospitals, as well as rehab facilities. So that's going to be, another extension of what we do. So it has to continue. I don't know if that answers anything.
Yeah, kind of does. Staying focused on the goal, the intention.
And that was hard sometimes too, because she's difficult. She can be abrasive and more so. Just controlling. I think she needs a very circumscribed way of things to be in her house in order to function. I remember the paper towel needed to be pulled down just so that she could see it. She is also legally blind. She sees double. It had to be facing one direction, but then the toilet paper had to be facing a different direction. There were very, very, very rigid systems she needed, and I understood that because this was her house and I was following by her rules. But it was hard to sometimes maintain the focus. Hey, lady, we're doing this thing for you. You are really pissing me off right now. You can attest to that.
Absolutely, and legally blind in this case with Judith is she sees everything in double, which is remarkable, particularly given her daytimes. And so she has to sort of cock her head. To to one side to be able to read. But she does.
I do appreciate what JCC is offering around like the intimacy of it too. It is like maybe not a question, in fact, that people would answer, but there is something about this creative piece of work that is very close to home and very close to heart. And actually like it is your life, and, you know, as opposed to something you're just putting out there that's like detached from you, but for yes, I see that. Yeah. Any final questions? Oh, a couple. Okay. 2 more, 3 more, I think. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Emily has the mic. She can bring that down for you.
So when you're encapsulating real life, it's very unique. So there are certain things that you emphasize, right? Like you could have emphasized acceptance or resiliency or family. Was there a specific threat that you followed in terms of the singular dominating theme, and why you chose that one, and also like whether your decision changed with the responsibilities in the life?
Do you hear that? I can repeat it.
Please.
Yeah. She's asking about themes, right? So we talked about acceptance today, what you could have went with in the film or by making the film, you could have moved through different themes. Acceptance, resilience, family, something. Was there one consistent one, or how did you change that or shape that as you worked on the film?
Well, for me, it was resilience, always. Yes.
Yeah, and I think we really wanted to be able to inspire people that had either experienced strokes or lived with people who experienced them. And there was something about Judith before her stroke that I always, that resonated with me. She always said that she would dip her toe into everything and say yes instead of no to things. And because of that, when she did have her stroke, there wasn't a whole lot of regret. So I just wanted to share that message, not, just to say yes and see what comes of it. And I think the fact that she is so at peace is a really inspiring thing that kept me going in terms of being.
Hi, this is a question for Anne. You had said that you hope that film will be useful for neurology departments. How else has creating this film affected your own personal medical practice?
Oh, I've been retired for years now, thankfully. And so, I've been able to devote much of my energy to the film. And when I was a psychologist in the school system, my focus as an educational psychologist, which is what I was in the school board, was, we did assessments, and those are very interesting. But my biggest interest was in getting kids who were really, really disturbed treatment in the schools, because that's really equity of access, and that was a big passion of mine. Yeah. And that's why I stayed on the board that was dedicated to school-based functioning, school-based treatment. Did that answer?
I guess did you retire before you started making the film?
I started at 55. I'm a little bit older than that now. Like a lot.
As an aside, multi-potential I hear, Anna's also a phenomenal folk singer and plays the banjo and guitars. And I have the pleasure of sometimes hearing it through the wall as well. So, no, I love it. Please, Alex.
This is a question for both of you. I'd like to know what have you learned about acceptance through this creative process and through this 20-year journey that you could share with us. What can help us be more accepting?
It's hard because, your body responds to frustration before your brain can sometimes. And as I keep saying, yesterday, today, all moments we have the opportunity to lean into the things that are not working, but there's something really powerful and delightful about working through that and getting to the laughs and accepting that, okay, there will be challenges along the way, but that doesn't have to halt things, that doesn't have to render things useless. I think I've learned that, we can kind of weather anything.
So leaning into the discomfort.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. What about you, Anne?
Well, just to say, to add to that, when we did the PowerPoint, I completely misunderstood the goal, and I started scripting every single slide. I mean, it was actually ridiculous. And Kaela said, "Mom, that's not what you're supposed to do." So again, I had to learn to, accept the fact that,
Or maybe in that too, Anne, some effort that you had put in that maybe, you had to put aside, as you kind of shifted gears to what was needed to be done.
Well,
Something in that.
Kaela very sweetly said to me, "Oh, Mom, I hope you would save this version." I said, "No, I didn't."
Well, their heart was behind that. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, Kaela. Thank you, Dr. Green. Thank you, Anne, so much.
Thank you, Kaela, for having us.
We're so glad. How can folks find the film or find you? What would be the best way for them to find out more?
Yeah, so we're still working out a few things in terms of logistics to get the whole film out there. But I believe in the next couple of weeks you can find it on Instagram. It's the Daytimers documentary Instagram. That's our handle. I should have that written down somewhere. But
we do have a website.
Yes, there's a website.
Website is?
I don't know.
www.thedaytimers.ca.
Okay, fantastic. Okay.
So maybe we'll
www.thedaytimers.ca.
So maybe we'll put this on your website. Okay.
Yes.
We'll put it on there. And that's all for you two. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you
want
so much,
to give them a big
everyone.
round of